Hi, I'm Matt Hernandez, and this is Book Chat with You. In most every episode, I cover short stories and try to make that be a conversation with you. Lately, I've been covering more comic books, and one day I might put those comic books into its own podcast because it is a bit of its own genre. Today, I'm looking at Amazing Spider-Man 542, Back in Black. This is Back in Black, issue 4 out of 5. Now, to put this issue very, very simply, all it is, well, Kingpin and Spider-Man have their big showdown. That is all this issue is. At the very end, we see Mary Jane and Aunt May at the hospital. Other than that, that's all this issue is. So clear cut and straight to the point. I'm laughing because of how that might sound. That's simple as that. Also, maybe if ever I put this to video, I don't know how this would ever be edited. But yes, I am recording this in the closet while I'm wearing a suit top, which you can kind of imagine why that is and what that means and all that. So, of course, I'm making these because I'm trying to cover this before the movie Spider-Man Brand New Day, because there is a comic book or a run of The Amazing Spider-Man called Brand New Day, but it looks like I'm not going to make it to that on time. The cover of this issue is the Kingpin looking behind himself ever so slightly from the side of his eye at Spider-Man crawling up on the ceiling. Now, the Kingpin's supposed to be in prison, so why do we see a stained glass window on the top of the prison? I don't know. And Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, is wearing a white tuxedo. He wants to wear that for his triumphant speech and grand last fight or showdown with Spider-Man. So we see an ad, we see a prologue, but if you've been following along at all, you already know what this issue's about. We go to the next page. The Kingpin is already giving Spider-Man a speech. The speech goes on for several pages. On the first of these speeches, as it says, I'm not going to read the whole thing verbatim. I'm going to read select quotes as I sort of go along and stuff. It says, but as arenas go, at least this one certainly comes with a very appreciative audience. Wouldn't you say so, Mr. Parker? When he says Mr. Parker, keep in mind, Peter Parker, Spider-Man, is wearing the Spider-Man black mask on. Of course, everybody knows who he is. You look at the next page, the Kingpin, he's being quite the orator. His hands are out to his sides, and he's giving the speech to everybody, to Peter Parker, to everybody behind him, and he calls Spider-Man the chump because he is the one who's foolish enough, or at least as he sees it, foolish enough to think that anything he does will work. Okay, we go to the next page. Then it says, where we see two panels here, a small panel on the top, zoomed in on Wilson Fisk's mouth, and it says, but I guess you can't make an omelet without breaking a few old ladies. Then we look below that, we see Spider-Man 3 times in this one picture to simulate a lot of movement going on, right? And then within all this movement, we see a punch with the left arm across, a straight up, almost like an axe kick, and then something here which might be elbowing, and then even on the foreground, we see a fist going straight up. And there we see Wilson Fisk's face 4 times, all struggling there. And then we see, it looks like Spider-Man had sort of done something of a backflip facing forward. Because imagine if you're behind somebody, you're back to them. If you do a backflip over them, then you'd be facing them, right? So, and then on this page beside that, we see 4 more panels, and Wilson Fisk's his teeth are darn, what's the word? His teeth are flaring up, and he's gritting his teeth. And then in this, so what I'd said almost with all these is that part of this might also come a little bit as a surprise, right? Because if you might know, but at about 2003, where it really started, I don't know, maybe 2001, the Ultimate Spider-Man comic series, but around 2003, I believe, there was an issue. Now, that's a different continuity. It is official in its own canon. It went on for a long time, and a teenage Spider-Man had fought Wilson Fisk. Same size difference here, I suppose, or maybe since Peter Parker in that series wasn't fully grown yet, the Kingpin was much larger than Spider-Man, and he beat the heck out of him. So if you were fresh thinking about this issue, which came out, I don't know, 4 or 5 years later, you might think that we might have a bit of an even fight. We do not. Nowhere close. As I continue reading this, Wilson Fisk might not land a single fist on Peter Parker. So on the bottom of these panels, it says, which is especially unfortunate since you've made a mockery of everything you stand and victimized the women you said you loved. Exactly what's left except humor? Because Wilson Fisk doesn't realize how bad he's lost the fight. He sees Spider-Man as not making any jokes. We go to the next page, and it's the same thing. we see, I counted it earlier, 3, but no, there are 4 Spider-Mans in this one panel, simulating a lot of movement with Wilson Fisk 4 times in this one picture to show that, Spider-Man is moving really fast. And now he's kind of hit Wilson Fisk to the floor. We see Wilson Fisk's eyes really small to try to simulate his face is extremely swollen. So on the next page, we have how many panels here? 6 panels. And Wilson Fisk says, cheap theatrics. I had expected better. Well, you said you were coming here to kill me. Are you here to fight or to dance? Because he's trying to say that, Peter Parker's not really fighting. He's dancing. Well, to that, I would also say that, I did a lot of capoeira for a while and I was getting quite good at it. Some fighting might look like dancing, but we can sort of see what he's saying, right? At least if you were able to see this. And then the way Spider-Man is going to fight next after this. So I'm going to go on to the next page. Okay, we see Spider-Man. He says, I'm not here to kill you. Then one panel down, we see the mask halfway up Spider-Man's face. On the next panel, we see Spider-Man's feet and the mask and his shirt top on the ground. And it says, I am. So showing Peter Parker's face. Peter Parker is there to kill. You might think of it being kind of the opposite, right? The one in the mask is the violent one, but no, that's not what Spider-Man's saying. Next page, 2 ads. I'll skip these for now. Then on to the next page. Okay, this is a 2-page spread. We see Peter Parker doing a full cross, like punch across Wilson Fisk's face. And then we see a palm fist to his nose. And then we see what looks like Peter Parker having thrown him. But if you look at this set of pictures now, it no longer looks like a cool, like, martial artsy kind of fight. Well, I guess it does in a different aspect, but it's not. There's nothing dancy or acrobatic about it. And then we see a kick to his face. It looks like a very crude, maybe front kick. And then the next one kind of stomping on his face. You really can't tell if Wilson Fisk is even standing up for that one. You look on the next page, quite a bit of blood with the silhouette, which looks like something like a backhanded fist. This next picture, I still can't tell what that is. You look one down, looks like Wilson Fisk has been somewhat thrown across the room, maybe over 10 feet. You look down, and then it says, you forget something. Peter Parker makes a bit of a speech. You don't have any powers and whatnot. I don't think there should ever be an insult if somebody does or doesn't have powers. In fact, I've kind of grown to think that comic books can be sort of a bad influence because of, we're only heroes if we have powers. But I think Peter Parker's trying to demoralize Kingpin in any way he can right there. You look at the next page and it says, at the end of the day, you're just a fat man with an attitude, a balloon. And me, I'm the needle. Okay, you look down, Wilson Fisk goes for one desperate dive, one desperate tackle. He misses. We see Wilson Fisk make a few strong attempts to actually strike Peter Parker, and he decides to stand there and just dodge them. Okay, we go to the next page. One hard punch, and Wilson Fisk is bleeding profusely out of his nose. Then, on the next page, on that same page, we see there are 4 panels to the right, and Peter Parker says, get up, Fisk. I said, get up. And that's something I should probably work on this, is to make a bit of the emotions whenever he's saying it, because I am actually re-recording this, and I think there's a bit more to say there with that. So Kingpin, he says, go to hell. I'll get up when I can't. He just says he cannot get up. Peter Parker picks him up. He picks him up by the skin between his collarbones and just pulls him up. Then he slaps him across the face. He backhand slaps him again. Slap, slap, slap. And we see, and the pictures almost looks like skin being shredded, being cut open. Okay, next page. Peter Parker's holding up Wilson Fisk again by the skin. And I don't know who has that much loose skin. He puts part of his own palm into his mouth and says, I can just suffocate you right now with my webs. Now, I don't know if there's an error going on with this comic. I truly do not know. But where are the web shooters? If anybody knows about that, why there's a lack of web shooters and why we'll see again web shooting, please let me know. Okay, he says it only takes 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. He's counting. 1, 2, 3. We see some of the other prisoners watching, and they're kind of in amazement and whatnot. This is a bit shocking for them to see. We see an ad. I'll skip this one for now. Okay, next page. Wilson Fisk, what? Then he just throws him across the room. Now, this is the whole thing. Am I going to do a comic overview? Am I going to do a review? Am I going to do commentary? Because What should he have done here? Should he then have killed Wilson Fisk? I mean, there is something about Spider-Man not killing, but there would be something to say about had he killed him here, especially when you know that the series is going to be rebooted. Now, we, the fans, might not have known that, especially when One More Day took, 2 months or something like that, I suppose. They kind of combined it with like Amazing Spider-Man, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, and I believe, is it Sensational Spider-Man? But nevertheless, they could have played around with this idea a bit more. But then why have this? Is this a cop-out? I don't know. Am I doing an overview? Am I doing a review? I don't know. Add. Next page. It says, and every man in this room saw me beat you. And now Peter Parker says, you see, I've always tried to avoid killing anyone, partly for my own principles and partly because I was always afraid of how it might affect my family if I killed someone. But if my aunt is dead, well, that takes care of one reason. And the other reason, well, I can make an exception. So he's telling him, if she dies, you die. And then he looks at all the prisoners and he says, you guys better not do anything because, well, you're going to get it. Next page, an ad. Spider-Man 3 bed set spread. Which, of course, here'd be a thing about commentary, which maybe I could do something after I finish these issues. Is this Back in Black to go along with the Spider-Man 3 movie that came out at about the same time? So then Spider-Man, he looks up very effortlessly, looks up and he shoots a web. And you'd have to think, if you're going to have a web shoot out of you and then you're going to pull on that, you're going to, but he's been doing this for a long time. And he says, but to tell you the truth, in your position, I wouldn't count too much on God if I were you. I think the word God here plays a significance with, Spider-Man basically meeting Satan. And I never read the issue. I don't have the issue. And I would have liked to gone over it if I had it. But in Sensational Spider-Man, apparently he would meet God and something about the way it's going to lead to the whole reboot of the series. So we look at all the prisoners. They're looking at Kingpin on the ground. Kingpin says, what are you looking at? They're all still kind of staring at him. And they're also kind of in this middle, I don't know, I'm not familiar with prisons, this middle hanging out area of a prison. And Wilson Fisk still manages to find the strength to get up. Now, on second thought, from what I thought earlier, yeah, I don't think Kingpin has the strength to get up. But yet you see him get up. He has that much pride in what he's doing that he just finds a way to forcibly get up and he just does it. So here we are at the end of the issue. Mary Jane says, did you get done everything you had to do, Peter? And he says, yeah, all done. And this is really just it. They really are not sure what else is left here to do. Mary Jane says this hospital is way too expensive. And Peter Parker says, well, that's why I brought her here. And she's like, yeah, it's very expensive. And then the next page, the last page, we see Aunt May in the hospital bed. She has a respirator on. And then Kingpin on the bottom. And he himself would need a hospital. And he's in his cell. We see an ad for a Fantastic Four cartoon. I kind of want to watch it based on this. We see a cover of the next issue. We see a video game for Fantastic Four or Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer video game. And then an ad for Got Milk, Silver Surfer Got Milk ad. And that's about it. I hope you had a wonderful day. And I do need to learn how to change my voice. I still would need a bit of practice about how to do my voice just right and how to savor certain moments, but I don't want to waste people's time in a sense. If I was to savor a certain moment, have a certain pause, raise my voice in a certain way, then maybe people might not listen because maybe people don't listen how I am now. But I do want to be expedient enough in what I do so that way, if time is the issue, then how do I say it fast enough and go over it fast enough? I don't know. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Bye now.